Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian in Washington, D.C., where we are at the Center for New American Security, and we're talking to Dr. Patrick Cronin, one of the nation's top Asia experts. Sir, thanks very much for talking to us. We understand that you're going to be taking a civilian job over in DoD, a non-political job. But I wanted to start off and take this opportunity with you to sort of ask you about some of the challenges the new administration is going to have to deal with. Donald Trump is going to be the 45th president of the United States, but there are some in Asia who are very, very concerned with some of the rhetoric that's come out of him. Obviously, China is a major issue. He's rankled China to a degree in terms of the outreach to Taiwan. What are some of the major issues that this administration is going to have to deal with, looking at it from the perspective of a China hand, and a China hand who may be engaged actually in some of this work?
Well, Vago, thank you. I think there are two sides of the coin for the Trump administration when it comes to Asia. On the one hand, it needs to have comprehensive strength, both military power, investing in the kind of naval and air forces that will project power forward credibly, even though countervailing forces are growing. And at the same time, it needs to have very credible economic power. So on the one hand, there's strength that has to be gathered and improved, and I think that's key to the presidency of Donald Trump. On the other hand, we can't throw away our critical alliances and our growing number of partners in the region. We have to engage effectively and not raise our transactional costs of doing business and staying engaged forward out in the region, but rather lower them, in fact, and build new alliances, build new partnerships with effective countries that really want to work together on the kind of rule of law and freedom of the seas approach that has been the hallmark of the United States. So strength, comprehensive strength on the one hand, but effective engagement with partners and allies on the other hand. So that's one set of challenges for the Trump administration when you look at Asia. When it comes to China specifically, we have to figure out how do we get to the desired end state of fair, deeper trade with a big economic power like China, and at the same time protect our interests and values as China's incrementally trying to assert itself over weaker neighbors in the region. That's a tough balancing act. No administration knows the secret answer to this, but the Trump administration, through both strength, including political and economic strength, and effective engagement, can at least improve our chances of effectively countering China and improving our own cooperation with China, hopefully, at the same time.
Is there, I was at a conference. It was an off-the-record event or background event. We couldn't attribute anything, but one of the folks there was a senior China hand, non-political and academic. But one of the things he was talking about is the delicacy of stomping the accelerator with the Chinese. That he said, with the China, it always has to be a very subtle game, and you have to be very clear with messages because sometimes Beijing misunderstands them. For example, tweets came up, and they were like, from the Chinese perspective, it's something that doesn't even compute because everything is so studied and planned and rehearsed. How do you view that? And what's the key? Is there a danger that if we stomp on the accelerator, then the Chinese also do that in an authoritarian system that can actually react more quickly?
Well, if you are going to stomp on the accelerator, you need to anticipate the responses because China will respond vociferously and strenuously to things that touch upon their core interests, like the One China policy. But talking about more competition with trade, for instance, I think there's an appetite in America for becoming more competitive with all countries who are not necessarily dealing with us fairly on a level playing field on trade. When it comes to security issues as well, it's important for the United States to mean what it says. But at the same time, as you point out, if you say something that forces a future red line that you may regret, then you don't really want to mean what you just said. So it's good to be unpredictable because that can get you leverage against all outside powers. But you don't want to be so unpredictable that your allies lack the reassurance they need to have confidence that they want to work with you in countering aggression and countering assertiveness. So there's no easy answer to this question. The answer is tweeting is not going to be the hallmark of the national security policy of the Trump administration. They may affect individual headlines from day to day, but that's more the smoke rather than the fire. And the fire really is the investments we need in our people, in our systems, the cooperation we need with allies and partners. The theater security cooperation programs that we have going on can be expanded and can be more effective. That's what we really need to protect American interests.
Let me take you to American interests. You mentioned America's allies. Obviously, Shinzo Abe was concerned enough to go all the way from Japan over to meet with the president-elect immediately after his becoming actually the first foreign leader to meet with the president-elect. There are recurrent Japanese fears that date back to when Nixon wanted to throw Japan under the bus, and it was Mao that said to Nixon, we prefer your boot to be on the Japanese neck. And there are some Japanese analysts who've sort of suggested that that's a concern that Japan has, that this is all an economic, transactional, long dance with the Chinese, and that they could end up getting hurt by that. What are some of the messages that the United States needs to deliver to some of its allies who get very, very nervous when the two 800-pound gorillas in the Asian cage begin to look like they're squaring off?
Japan, like our other key allies and partners that are spending a good deal on defense, Australia, India, for instance, each of those three countries is spending almost $50 billion a year on defense. Add those three up together, that's maybe half of what China's spending. We need to work very effectively on a defense front to make sure that Japan is not just doing its fair share within the alliance, but most importantly, it's really adding to its own combat potential. That's not the boot on the throat of Japan model that we grew out of World War II with. It's not the cap in the bottle mentality either that was often expressed in the Cold War period when we're thinking about the U.S.-Japan alliance. It's instead empowering Japan to be a normal power and to work very closely with it. And knowing that with $50 billion a year defense, it's not going to overrun China. It's not going to look at anything to undermine its own democracy and its approach to international order. It's the third largest economy in the world. It wants to stay engaged as on the top tier of world powers. It doesn't want to descend down off of that chart. So we need to work very closely with Japan. I think Abe and Trump are going to be the closest of allies. I think the Prime Minister of Japan may be one of the first foreign leaders in the White House, just as he was after the election of Donald Trump. And I think the alliance really has great potential now to be the most effective military security relationship in the Asia-Pacific region, because there is no other effective military partnership in Northeast Asia to deal with China, because the ROK-U.S. relationship with South Korea is so focused on North Korea, and it's not yet focused on larger regional issues. And indeed, the alliance goes a little wobbly when you start to talk about China.
I know that your time is tight, so let me ask you three big questions, but compacted into try to get you to address them in a sort of a lightning round fashion. Okay. First, Taiwan. Obviously, the president-elect raised his eyebrows when he took the phone call from Taiwan's leader. That infuriated Beijing. Rex Tillerson has made some comments regarding the islands. Talk to us a little bit about Taiwan. Where it stands, where it's going to stand in the new structure. Give us a little sense on where Philippines stand in this, obviously, because there were disagreements, significant disagreements still exist between the United States government and how Duterte is dealing with his internal challenges. And then quickly on North Korea and how you view what happened on the peninsula, because there are those who say that Kim Jong-un is not like his dad or his grandfather, who's very good at the brinksmanship game, that he may actually be very emboldened now that he has a weapon and potentially the means to deliver it.
Taiwan has been a quiescent issue in recent years because the cross-strait relations between Taipei and Beijing have gone well until the newly elected Democratic Progressive Party of Tsai Ing-wen last year has opened up new questions from China's perspective about the reliability of the march toward integration, which China assumes is inevitable and necessary. Donald Trump comes into the picture and reinforces Tsai Ing-wen's autonomy-sounding platform by trying to raise the profile and the level of engagement with Taiwan. In reality, there's not much room we can go beyond some symbolism with Taiwan. There's already a great deal of cooperation with Taiwan. Taiwan can't fight its way out of the security dilemma it faces with the mainland. And I think that China's going to put more pressure on Tsai Ing-wen in 2017 and beyond. And so Donald Trump and the administration are going to have to be very careful about how far we push China because they see this as a core interest. At the same time, I think President Trump is also right to look for support for the freedom of the people of Taiwan. and to look for U.S. interests, which includes keeping China engaged a bit on the Taiwan issue, not just free to reach out and out of the southern part of the South China Sea, which is something they've done since the Taiwan Strait issue has become more quiescent in the last decade. I think on the Philippines, President Rodrigo Duterte can be a very important bridge to a stronger alliance between the Philippines and the United States. I don't think Duterte and Trump will ever do what Obama and Aquino had in terms of building the alliance back up into a real partnership. But I think that most of the continuity that we can expect in Philippine-U.S. relations will be there because it's in the mutual interests of the Philippines and the United States. But Philippines will be playing the field with other powers, inviting Russia, China, and others in for business, and that's not all bad. But we need to preserve U.S. interests, and we need to make sure that the Philippines understand their interests as well in stability, including in the South China Sea, and in a strong environment where you need maritime domain awareness, where you need cooperation on counterterrorism as well. I think the third issue...
North Korea?
North Korea. North Korea, of course, is almost in a league of its own because it's the most pressing, serious security threat in the Asia-Pacific region because of the risk of nuclear war breaking out. And at the moment we're speaking, North Korea is still threatening to launch a mobile ICBM system, and even if that fails, it'll be steps forward toward eventually deploying a mobile ICBM that could strike U.S. territory. Many people see that as changing the game, and I don't think the Trump administration wants to be the U.S. administration that goes down in the history book saying North Korea finally deployed an ICBM that could hit American soil on the Trump administration's watch. The problem is the options are really bad. But there are options, and the options are essentially a comprehensive policy of containment, of punishment, of denial, of raising the defensive capabilities of the U.S. and our allies, Korea, Japan, as well as working with China to the extent possible, but not expecting too much.
And last question, does Taiwan get new arms, which the United States has been reticent to do for many, many administrations?
Taiwan needs better defenses because they need to be able to do more than what a Chinese analyst said the other day to me, which was that Taiwan could only defend itself for about 2 days or maybe 3 days at most. And they need to have a very strong porcupine strategy that would say to the Chinese, if you want to invade us, if you want to use force to invade Taiwan, to deny us our freedom, then you're going to have to pay a bigger price than that. They still are going to need American help, but right now the help they need is an arms cooperation. They're trying to build an indigenous arms cooperation deal that helps Taiwan build things they can build themselves, but still with U.S. help. And I think that combination of helping Taiwan with defense arms, but also helping them build a defense industry again, can be part of the solution toward an effective enough military strategy to deter Chinese aggression.
Patrick, thanks very much, and the very best for whatever is to come. Fair winds following seas. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Vago. I appreciate it.